Do you condemn what happened that day?
I have to first correct you on something. It was by no means the single biggest slaughter in the Israel-Palestine chapter. The fact that you thought, I mean disrespectfully, that this was the biggest single day of slaughter is part of the problem.
In a recent interview on Piers Morgan Uncensored, George Galloway brutally fact-checks Piers Morgan on his lies about the Israeli genocide.
October the 7th, I felt it was on a scale completely unprecedented for one day of slaughter that we have seen in that entire conflict. It was so barbaric, so medieval, so inhuman in the way it was executed against so many, in the main, young, innocent people at festivals, in kibbutzes and so on. I felt you had to start this debate about what's going on with a clear denunciation of what happened that day.
Piers Morgan has kept on repeating the lie that October 7th is the single biggest death toll on a single day since the Israeli invasion of Palestine began in the early 20th century. George Galloway was swift to fact-check him.
Do you condemn what happened that day?
Well, I have to first correct you on something. It was by no means the single biggest slaughter in the Israel-Palestine chapter.
In one day?
In one day. In fact, in 5 hours, with Sharon on the roof shining a searchlight into the Sabra and Shatila camps in Beirut. 3,850 Palestinian women and children. There were only women and children because the men had all agreed to sail away to Tunisia as part of an American brokered deal. Now, younger viewers will not remember Sabra and Shatila, but those two names are burned in the minds of those older and who care about it. So that's triple the actual death toll on October the 7th.
Well, nearly 7,000 more were wounded on October the 7th.
Yeah, but the fact that you thought, I mean disrespectfully, that this was the biggest single day of slaughter is part of the problem. The lives, the blood of Palestinians is oftentimes by commentators and politicians regarded as less valuable than the blood of Israelis. All the blood is a disgrace, all of it. And insofar as terrorist acts are committed by Palestinian organizations, by terrorists I mean the harming, killing of innocent civilians, of course I condemn that.
Then George Galloway goes on to reveal the shocking truth about what really happened on October 7th.
The number you gave for the other atrocity, which is what it was, is disputed. You know it's disputed. So
the Sabra Shatila?
Yeah, the actual toll is disputed.
Well, the death toll on October 7th is
Well, I know you dispute it, but there's more clarity about the numbers on that.
No, there isn't, because the Israeli media reports have not been reflected in Western reports. But the Israeli media all the time reports that significant casualties were inflicted by Israeli forces themselves, and deliberately, under Netanyahu's Hannibal directive, which states that no one should be allowed to be taken hostage. Kill them rather than allow them to be taken hostage.
The Hannibal directive is the name of a controversial procedure that the Israeli Defense Force uses to prevent the capture of Israeli soldiers by enemy forces. The directive suggests that the kidnapping must be stopped by all means, even at the price of striking and harming their own forces. This is why many Israeli news outlets reported that the IDF killed their own fellow Israeli citizens on October 7th. When it came to the subject of hostages, George Galloway had the following to say.
I also condemn the taking of women and children as hostages.
Right.
Whether they're taken by the Israeli government, and there are 9,000 hostages in Israeli dungeons that are untried, not even charged. They're just held there as hostages.
According to an Al Jazeera report, 9,500 Palestinians are held in Israeli prisons as hostages, 3,660 of them without charge or trial, 200 of whom are children and minors.
When people categorize what Hamas did on October 7th as resistance, do you think that's an acceptable choice of word for what happened that day?
If you're fighting against occupation forces, undoubtedly it is. So if you cross the wire, break out of the wire of the concentration camp, it was David Cameron, I remind you, who called it the largest open-air prison camp in the world. If you break through and you start taking a toll on your guards, the people who've kept you in this absolute immiseration, penury, with regular death being dealt to you, then that's a legitimate act of resistance.
It's not legitimate to attack kids and grandmothers.
I already said that.
No, that's what I mean.
Already
but that's what I mean. Yeah. Some people try to describe what Hamas did that day as resistance.
No, killing grandmas and kids is terrorism.
It's not resistance.
It's not resistance.
Right.
It's terrorism.
That's my point.
But killing soldiers and security officers of the Israeli state is enshrined in international law. When you used the phrase earlier about Israel having the right to defend itself, it literally does not have the right It's excluded.
Every country has the right to defend itself.
It's excluded in international law that any country has the right to defend itself from territories that it illegally occupies. So the occupied have that right to defend yourself by killing and mutilating 150,000 people and climbing. Save the Children have just said there are 21,000 missing children on top of the 15,000.
We don't have these figures. These figures have not been confirmed.
Well, you can believe Save the Children or not. I think they're a pretty reputable organisation.
I believe
Princess Anne is their
it is widely accepted that up to about 40,000 people so far have died. We don't know how many of those are Hamas. Israel would have you believe it's 15,000.
Well, I've seen a lot of pictures of people who are manifestly not Hamas.
I agree.
So have you.
I agree. And I think the slaughter of the children has been horrific.
Yeah, and inevitable.
Yeah.
Inevitable.
It is inevitable.
If you defend yourself by raining down bombs on tents, it is inevitable that you are going to kill and mutilate children and women who cannot possibly be Hamas.
But Hamas would have known that Israel would respond in that way.
Yes, but Israel would have known that if you keep 2.3 million people in a cage, they're going to try and break out. So there's all kinds of concomitant should have known in this story. They should have known when they occupied Palestinian land, drove hundreds of thousands of them out, never to return, that those people would have children and they would have children, and enmity, bitterness, and a desire for revenge would exist forever. And so it has. The two-state solution, which I supported as an Arafatist, I look foolish now, having supported the Oslo Agreement. I look like an idiot.
Why?
Arafat looks like an idiot. Because we believed that there would be a two-state solution. And almost 40 years after the agreement, there's not 1 centimeter of Palestine free. And Gaza is in complete ruins. The West Bank is on fire. Settlers are running amok. The attempt to ethnically cleanse the West Bank and East Jerusalem is running concurrently with the slaughter in Gaza. So where are you going to put two-state solution?
I would add a massive but to that, which is, but one of the main reasons for this current mayhem is what Hamas did on October the 7th.
I don't agree at all with that.
You have to agree with that.
The chronology makes it clear that that's not true. There's 800,000 illegal settlers in the West Bank. They all settled there long before October the 7th. It's as foolish to think that this all began on October 7th. I know you don't. Many commentators feel that way. The resistance from 1948 onwards was because the country called Palestine was wiped off the map and its people scattered to the four winds. They're never going to accept that. Neither would you. We wouldn't accept it in our own country.
Can you put yourself in the
If someone came from New York and took over your house, Piers, you would never accept it. But the facts cannot be changed. There once was a Palestine, now there is not. The people came from New York, from Paris and London and all over Europe and took their homes and took their land. No one's ever going to accept that. There will always be resistance to that. As long as there are 2 Palestinians left alive, male and female, there will be a Palestinian resistance.